May I invite everyone to please stand for a prayer and remain standing for the singing of the Philippine National Anthem.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for gathering us all today in this important endeavor. We ask that you bestow your guidance and blessing upon each attendee. May we honor one another by keeping an open mind. May we voice our truth and listen with an open heart. Bless everyone present today, that each may be able to share his or her contributions and gifts. Grant good health and safety to loved ones left outside this room, and bestow peace and goodwill to all of us. We ask for the wisdom and grace to use our talents for the betterment of others. May the various activities related to this day be a success through your intervention. With gratitude, we offer this prayer in your name. Amen. By this room.
Mga kababayan, ang pagbansang awit ng Pilipinas.
You may now take your seats. Today, we will delve into the vital role of education in our society by understanding the Constitution and laws that uphold it. But before we dive into our discussion, let's energize ourselves. We've prepared a short activity inspired by the famous Japanese TikTok energizer, Tom You Know. Let's all stand and join us for a quick energizer to awaken our minds and set our spirits alive. Please stand again, everyone. Just follow the video. Where's the energy? Right. Now take your seats. Now that our energies are set, let's get ready for enlightening discussion. As we all know that education is the cornerstone of our future. Through learning, we gain the power to grow, create, and serve our nation. Today, we will examine key provisions of our Constitution and laws that protect and promote education. We are embarking on a journey through the world of Constitution and law to understand how they shape our educational system. We have 6 speakers today who will share their knowledge with us. To begin, our first speaker will guide us through the 1987 Constitution, Article 14. She is a proud graduate of St. Francis Academy under the Accountancy, Business, and Management strand, now pursuing a Bachelor of Secondary Education major in English here at Cebu Normal University, Balapan campus. Currently, she also serves as the Information and Creative Affairs Officer of the Education Council. Let us all welcome Ms. Joshelle May Lucas. Let's give her a sound of applause.
Thank you, Mr. Cabayles. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I stand before you to discuss one of the most vital pillars of our 1987 Philippine Constitution, Article 14, Education, Science, and Technology, Arts, Culture, and Sports. Now you might be wondering, why did our lawmakers dedicate an entire article to these areas? The answer is simple. It's because they are the lifeblood of the nation. Without education, there is no empowerment. Without culture, there is no identity. Without science, there is no progress. And without sports, there is no holistic development of the human spirit. Article 14 serves as the guiding light of how the state should uphold every Filipino's right to learn, to think, to create, and to excel. Today, let us take a closer look at its provision and see how they are alive in our daily lives. We begin with education. Section 1 clearly states, the state shall protect and promote the right of all citizens to quality education at all levels, and shall take appropriate steps to make such education accessible to all. This single line is powerful. It's because it tells us that education is not a privilege reserved for the rich, but a right to guarantee to every Filipino, mandato o mapobre. We have the right to learn and guarantee our equality and also to succeed as one. And more than that, the government is duty-bound to make sure that such access is possible, whether you live in the city, in the mountains, or in the far-flung islands. Now, at this point, let me ask you, do you agree or disagree that education should be treated as a right and never as a privilege? Reminder that there are no wrong answers and your opinion is always valid. Again, I repeat the question, do you agree or disagree that education should be treated as a right and never as a privilege? ensures inclusivity and fairness. It levels the playing field by giving every Filipino, rich or poor, the chance to learn, to dream, and to succeed. If education were only a privilege, then progress would be reserved for the few, and inequality would grow. That is why our Constitution made education a right, not a luxury. And now, let us go deeper to Section 2, the state duties. So how does the state fulfill this duty? In Section 2, it aligns the responsibilities. First, it must establish a complete and relevant education system, one that adapts to the needs of our society. This is why today, our curriculum includes not just reading, writing, and arithmetic, but also digital literacy, disaster preparedness, and values formation. Second, the Constitution mandates free public education at the elementary and high school levels. Elementary education is even made compulsory because we believe that no child should be deprived of basic education. Third, it speaks out of scholarships, subsidies, and loans, opportunities that give deserving students a chance to pursue higher education, regardless of their financial background. A clear example is Republic Act 109B1, or the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act, which grants free tuition in states, universities, and colleges. Fourth, the Constitution acknowledges non-formal and alternative systems, such as Alternative Learning System, or ALS, and it opens door for out-of-school youth and adults who could not finish their studies. And finally, it recognizes the need to train adults, persons with disabilities, and out-of-school youth in vocational skills. Programs often provided by TESDA today. Now, what should education contain? In Section 3, it tells us that schools must teach the Constitution, instill patriotism and nationalism, foster respect for human rights, and encourage critical and creative thinking. In short, education should not only encourage critical and creative thinking. That is why we learn about our national heroes, why we study civic responsibility, and why subjects like values, education, and good manners, and right conduct are part of our curriculum. The same section also respects diversity in debate. It allows religion to be taught in public schools, but only if parents consent. This balance shows our commitment to both education and freedom of choice. Now we have Section 4, Public and Private Schools. Section 4 acknowledges that both public and private institutions place important rules in education. The state supervises them to ensure standards are met, but it also protects Filipino ownership of schools, preventing education from being dominated by foreign interests. This safeguards preserves our identity while allowing us to learn from the global community. Next, we have Section 5, Teachers' Academic Freedom Budget. The Constitution also highlights the role of teachers and institutions. Academic freedom is guaranteed in higher education, allowing colleges and universities to pursue knowledge without undue interference. Teachers are given the right to professional growth and protection, recognizing them as the backbone of education. And importantly, education is given the highest budgetary priority. A reminder that investing in teachers, students, and schools is investing in the nation itself. Next, we have language. Article 14 also speaks about language. It declares Filipino as the national language, with English as another official language. Regional languages serve as auxiliary languages of instruction in their respective areas. This multilingual approach Constitution respects both unity and diversity. One national language to unite us. Hello, sound check. In this way, many regional languages to enrich us. Now, the next one. Hello. Now, let us turn to science and technology. In section 10 makes it clear science is essential for national development. The state must prioritize research, innovation, and education for national development. Now, this means that supporting local scientists, encouraging inventions, and applying science for national life, from agriculture to medicine, from climate change adoption to digital transformation. In section 11, it allows incentives like scholarships and tax deductions to encourage private participation in scientific research. Now, in section 12, it regulates technology transfer, ensuring that foreign technology benefits the nation. And section 13 protects the intellectual property rights of inventors, scientists, and artists, giving them recognition and security for their contributions. In summary, Article 14 of our Constitution ensures that education is not only a right but a responsibility of the state. It builds a system that values both access and quality, that strengthens public income, while respecting diversity, that upholds teachers and learners alike, and that champions science and technology for progress. When we understand this article, we realize that the future of our country does not lie solely in politics or economics. Hello, sound. Now we realize that the future of our country does not lie solely in politics or economics. It lies in education, culture, and innovation. It is how we prepare our people, young and old, to face the challenges of our changing world. As we reflect on these, may we all reminded that education is not just about learning facts, but about shaping lives, building communities, and empowering a nation. And that will be all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that insightful discussion, Ms. Michelle. It is truly language, science, and technology are the lifeblood of progress. Just as our Constitution recognizes the role, may we also remember that mastering them is not a duty, but a responsibility to our future generations. If you have any questions regarding to Ms. Michelle's discussion, please feel free to raise your hands if you have any questions. Yes, Dana?
You mentioned that education is a right and should be accessible to all, but in reality, many students still drop out due to poverty, lack of sources, or distance from the school. How do you think the government or communities can truly fulfill the constitutional promise of making quality education more accessible for everyone, especially in the marginalized areas?
Okay. Based on what I have said earlier, so while the Constitution guarantees the right to education, we know that poverty, lack of resources, and distance still cause dropouts. So to address this problem, the government has programs like Fortis, alternative learning system, or tinatawag nato ang ASCAL, and TESDA for skills training and free tuition in state universities, just like in ato eskwelahan, which is the Cebu Normal University. But beyond the government's effort, so communities and families also play a role by supporting students through local scholarships, school supplies, or even transportation assistance, making education truly accessible. It requires cooperation to both the state and society to turn this constitutional right into reality. And that will be all, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Giselle. Up next, she is a graduate of Loob Norte National High School under Humanities and Social Sciences, pursuing a Bachelor of Secondary Education major in English here at Cebu Normal University Balangban campus, and currently serves as the Vice Governor of the Education Council. Let us all welcome Ms. Fatima Balsa. A round of applause, please.
So the government plays a big role in caring for our arts and culture. It supports the preservation and growth of Filipino culture, respecting the many different traditions across the country. In Section 14, Promotion of Filipino Culture, this section declares the state's responsibility to nurture and develop a unique Filipino national culture. It highlights the importance of unity amid the country's diverse cultural groups. The promotion of free artistic and intellectual expression ensures that culture remains vibrant, dynamic, and open to innovation while respecting diversity. In Section 15, the state commits to supporting the arts and letters through patronage, which means providing resources, funding, and institutional backing. These includes conserving, promoting, and popularizing the nation's historical and cultural heritage, along with contemporary artistic creations to booster national pride and culture awareness. In Section 16, this section designates the country's artistic and historic assets as the nation's cultural treasures, which must be protected by the state. The government is empowered to regulate how these treasures are handled, ensuring their preservation and preventing misuse or loss. In Section 17, the rights of indigenous cultural communities to maintain and develop their own cultures, traditions, and institutions are recognized and protected. This ensures their cultural identity is preserved and respected in national development plans and policies, affirming their integral role in the nation's cultural landscape. In Section 18, Equal Access of Cultural Research. This case guarantees equal access to opportunities in culture through education, cultural organizations, scholarships, and community centers. These promotes cultural inclusiveness, allowing people from all backgrounds to participate in and benefit from cultural activities. The state also encourages and supports research and academic studies on arts and culture, helping to deepen understanding, innovate, and preserve cultural knowledge. In sports, Section 19, the state promotes physical education and sports programs aimed at fostering virtues like self-discipline, the teamwork, and excellence. These programs help with athletic clubs and other sectors. This ensures widespread participation in sports, encouraging physical fitness and curriculum engagement among students. That will be all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that insightful words, Ms. Fatima. It is indeed arts, culture, and sports are not just pastimes. They are the heartbeats of our identity. They remind us that education is holistic, shaping not only the mind, but also the spirit and the soul of a nation. If you have any questions, you can raise your hands. Yes?
So, how do you think the Education Act of 1982 ensures equal access to education for all learners, regardless of their background or circumstances?
Okay, thank you for that questions. The Education Act ensures equal access by making it as a policy, to welcome all learners regardless of their gender, background.
So much. Let's give Ms. Fatima a round of applause. Our third speaker is a graduate of NACA National High School under Humanities and Social Sciences, a lover of educational books, pursuing Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in English, here at Cebu Normal University, Balangban Campus. Let's welcome our third speaker, Ms. Sherin Alegio.
Thank you, John. Yes. I love reading educational books, especially with no company. Are you feeling good today? You still have energy. Okay, shake your hands. Alright. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we will be diving into a essential part of our education system. The educational community, as defined by law. The section of our education group outlines the rules, rights, and responsibilities of parents, students, teachers, school administration, and even the schools themselves. Understanding this purpose is important because it reminds us that education is not sole duty of teacher or the government, but a shared responsibility of the entire community. Let us begin with Section 5, the Declaration of Policy and Objectives. The law emphasizes that government fosters cooperation among all members of the educational community, parents, students, teachers, administration, and the schools. Why? Because only an atmosphere of shared purpose can education achieve its true goal. For example, imagine a student whose parents actively support their learning at home, whose teachers are dedicated, and whose school administrators and ensure proper resources are available. The child will thrive not only academically, but also socially and emotionally. The state also supports its parents their natural duty of raising their children, safeguards the welfare of students by defining their rights, and promotes the well-being of school personnel by improving their working conditions. In short, everyone's role is valued because everyone contributes to shaping the youth. Moving to Section 6, the definition and coverage. The term educational community does not only mean students and teachers, Section 7. Community participation. The law mandates that school provide avenues where parents, students, teachers, and administrators can come together to discuss school matters. These are councils or community where concerns can be voiced and ideas shared. For instance, a parents-teacher associate is a practical example, such as bodies, ensure transparency, and help schools adjust to the needs of their community. So now, let me ask you a question. Do you agree or disagree that students should also have a voice in how school are run? So let me repeat you the question. Do you agree or disagree that students should have a voice in school, how to run or how to be managed? Do you agree?
Yes, I agree, Miss.
Thank you, Ms. Zena. So, since you agree, you are absolutely right. The students are the very heart of education. And giving them voice fosters the responsibility, leadership, and sense of belonging. When students are allowed to express themselves through school councils or publication, they learn democratic values and accountability. After all, education is not just about academics. It's about preparing responsible citizens. Let us now move to Chapter 2, the rights. First, the rights of parents. Section 8. Parents have the right to organize, access records of their children, and ensure cooperation with teachers and the school program. This is crucial because parents remain the primary educators. For example, even if the teachers give lessons without parents ensuring discipline and support at home, learning will be incomplete. Next, the rights of students. Section 9. This right includes receiving quality education, choosing their valued study, access to guidance services, the right to school records, the right to student publication, and the right to express opinions. They can also form organization and must be free from elementary contributions. These rights are not just privilege. They empower students to grow in an environment of freedom and responsibility. Then, we move to the rights of school personnel. Section 10. Teachers and staff have the rights to free expression, free legal services when needed, and joint organization. They must also be protected by involuntary contribution. Imagine a teacher being sued by a parent for enforcing discipline. The law ensures that the teacher is giving support, especially rights for teachers. Section 11 includes protection of their intellectual property, the rights to career advance, and being the main person authority. This last point is important. When a teacher disciplines a child in school, it carries the weight of law, and they must be respected. Section 12 covers the right of school administrators. They are also the person in authority and given discretion to perform their duties effectively.
leadership, even the best teacher cannot thrive. Leadership sets the tone of us all. This is the heart of our discussion. Education is a shared vision. A teacher can inspire, a parent can support, a student can strive, an administration can lead, and a school can provide opportunity, but only when all work together can education fulfill its true purpose. In conclusion, the educational community is a dynamic partnership. Each member, parent, student, parent, student, teacher, administrator, or institution has rights, duties, and responsibilities. When all embrace the role, we do not just create graduates. We create responsible, empowered citizens who can lead our nation to progress. Thank you, and let us remember, education is just not a task for one, but a duty for all.
Alright, thank you so much for those inspiring words, Sharon. Are you still with us?
Yes!
Alright, so if you're still with us, let me ask you a question. Miss Shirley? Alright, General. So my question is with regards to the chapter 2 of Sharon's discussion. Now let me ask you, what do you think is the role of our parents in education?
For me, the role of parents in education is they will be the one that will support our education.
Alright, so in what way that our parents support our education for me?
You might go like that.
Okay, so thank you so much. Ingon ko na siya na ang support ng mga kasatong parents is financially daw. Sa to, moral support. Alright, thank you for that. As we all know that educational community reminds us that learning is never one-sided. It is a shared effort of teachers, learners, parents, and society. When we unite as one community, education becomes truly powerful. Now, if you have any question regarding to Ms. Sharon's discussion, please feel free to raise your hand.
So now, Ms. Salguero, in your opinion, what group needs more support today?
For me, all groups deserve support, but if I were to choose, it will be students. They are the very heart of education, as I mentioned earlier. When students are guided, supported, and empowered, they grow into responsible citizens. With this success, all the community will be benefits. Thank you.
Moving forward, our fourth speaker. She is also a graduate of Nangka National High School under Humanities and Social Sciences, a talented singer, an aspiring model, and now pursuing Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in English, here at Cebu Normal University, Balamban Campus. Let's welcome Ms. Janelle Bukag. A round of applause, please.
Hello. So thank you for that, Mr. Cabales. So good day, everyone. We all know that education is one of the most powerful tools we can have. It shapes our knowledge, values, and even the direction of our lives. But
we follow. It is guided by the law. So the Education Act of 1982, specifically Section 19 to 32, lays down how educational system should work. Today, I will walk you through this provision, but I will not just explain the law in theory. I will connect it to real situations that affect students, parents, and the teachers every single day. Before we begin, let me ask you a question. Do you believe that education has the power to change your future? Is it a yes or a no? Yes! Okay, and now build your energy. So let's begin with formal education, which the law describes as the main learning system of society. In elementary education, in Section 21, children are introduced to basic reading, writing, arithmetic, and values. Think of a grade 2 pupil learning math. It is a preparation for real life and for managing as an adult. In secondary education, in Section 22, students are prepared for either work or higher studies. For example, when a student joins a science fair or become active in the student council, they are not just learning subjects. They are learning leadership, problem solving, and teamwork, the skills that go beyond the classroom. Then here comes tertiary education in Section 23, where students specialize in their chosen fields. Well, all witnessed there during the pandemic, when nursing and medical graduates become frontliners. That is the law at work, producing professionals who directly serve the needs of the society. In short, Section 19 to 23 remind us that formal education is not just about diplomas. It is about preparing Filipinos to face the real challenges of life and work. But education does not stop at the classroom. The law also recognizes non-formal and specialized education in Section 24. Think of the alternative learning system. It gives out of school youth and adults a second chance to complete basic education. I'm sure many of you have heard inspiring stories like a tricycle driver who studied at night throughout and finally earned his high school diploma. That one piece of paper can change his opportunities in life. Specialized education also ensures inclusion. A children who is deaf learns through sign language. A visually impaired student uses braille. These are not privileged. They are rights protected by law. The message is clear. Every Filipino, regardless of age, status, or ability, deserves education. Now, let us talk about how schools are established and regulated. Section 25 tells us that public schools are run by the government, while private schools are run by corporations and associations. Both exist to widen access to education. Section 27 requires schools to secure official recognition. This is very practical. Imagine a parent enrolling their children in a school that turns out to be unrecognized by DepEd or CHED. After years of tuition, the child's diploma would be worthless. That's exactly what the law prevents. Section 29 allows accreditation for institutions that maintain high standards. This is why some schools are recognized internationally. Their grades can pursue studies or jobs abroad more easily. So when parents carefully choose where to enroll their children, they're actually applying the wisdom of these laws in real life. Finally, let's look inside the schools themselves. Section 30 to 32 explain how schools must be organized internally. Section 30 requires schools to create structures for academics, discipline, and administration. This is why we have guidance office, student governments, and grievance board. They ensure that schools are not just a place of learning, but also of fairness and order. Section while private schools follow their own charters. In Section 32, it protects the school personnel. Public school employees follow civil service rules, while private schools and staff are protected by labor code. This means that teachers are not only expected to serve, they are also insured for their rights. In short, these provisions make schools safe, accountable, and fair for both students and teachers. To summarize, formal education builds our foundation for life and work. Non-formal education provides second chance and inclusivity. Establishment of schools ensures quality and recognition. Internal organization protects both students and teachers. These are not just sections of law. They are alive in every classroom, every diploma, every alternative learning program, and every school office. So whenever we step into a classroom, attend a graduation, or witness an adult learning reserve or certificate, we are not just seeing education. We are seeing the Education Act of 1982 in action, fulfilling its promise to make education right, a responsibility, and a source of hope for every Filipino. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Janelle, for discussing about the educational system here in the Philippines. So, with regards to that, I want Nash to answer my question since you're not listening, you're just on your phone. My question is, what do you think is the or unsa educational system in the Philippines? What can you say about the educational system here in the Philippines?
The only thing that I can say about education here in the Philippines is it's organized and it runs smoothly.
Alright, thank you for that. So according to it, the educational system in the Philippines is organized. Alright, so as we all know that our discussion is all about the educational system here in the Philippines, it is important structure. Importante na siya na dapat organized. So like model, like she is, it must inspire others. And like life, it must have direction. Again, please feel free to raise your hands if you have any questions regarding to Ms. Janelle's discussion. Alright? Alright, Ms. Erica.
Hello, good morning everyone. Peace and goodness be with us all, especially to Ms. Janelle. So my question is, does the Education Act of 1982 said that every Filipino has the right to education?
Thank you. Yes, as said, education is a right for all and never a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Alright, our fifth speaker is a graduate of Erasmo Silva Villegas Senior National High School under Humanities and Social Sciences, an aspiring actor, and now pursuing Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in English, here at Cebu Normal University, Balamban Campus. Please help me welcome Mr. Lloyd Elosido. A round of applause, please.
Thank you for joining us everyone that wonderful introduction. Good day everyone. As I continue with the discussion, the educational system is under fire. Today, I invite you to take a closer look at one of the most important yet often overlooked aspects of education, school finance and assistance. Many of us believe that the true challenge of education lies in teaching, but before the lesson can even begin, school must have classroom, teacher must be paid, and student must be supported. None of this is possible without proper funding. When we speak of school finance, we are not just talking about numbers in the budget. We're speaking about fairness, accessibility, and opportunities. It is how a child from a remote barangay can still dream of becoming a nurse, a teacher, or an engineer, because funds, assistance, and scholarship make education accessible. Now let us carefully explore how our state has designed system of funding and assistance for both public and private schools. The incentives it provides for participation and the many ways it supports students to dream of a better life through education. Funding of public schools. Public schools are primarily funded by the national government. This ensures that the students remain a right and not a privilege. But the responsibility does not rest with the national government alone. Section 33, Declaration of Policy. This states that ensures financial support for education. Section 34, National Funds. Public schools are mainly funded by national funds with local government encouraged to help. Section 35, Financial aids and assistance to public secondary schools. The government provides financial aid to public secondary schools, including barangay high schools. Section 36, Share of local government. Local government must allocate part of their annual budget for school operations. Section 37, Special Education Funds. Special education funds from local government are used exclusively for educational needs. Section 30, Tuition and other school fees. Secondary and post-secondary schools, we collect tuition and fees to improve facilities. Section 39, from other sources, schools can also earn income from donation and production activities allowed by law. Now a question. Do you disagree or agree that the national government funds only public schools? I repeat. Do you disagree or agree that the national government only funds public schools? Thank you for that. That's right, because local government also contribute financially. The funding of private schools. Private schools, on the other hand, sustain themselves through tuition fees, capital investment, and donation. At first glance, you may think that the state leaves private schools on their own. But that's not entirely true. In fact, the government recognizes private schools as partners in the educational system. Section 40, Funding of Private Schools. Private schools be funded through investment, tuitions, grants, and loans. Section 41, Government Assistance. The government may assist them through scholarship or financial aid, as long as the program meet standards. Section 42, Tuition and other school fees. Private schools set their own tuition and charges subject to government regulations. Section 43, Income from other sources. They may receive income from donation, grants, or other enterprises. Section 44, Institutional funds. Tuition fees and other income are considered institutional funds for school use. Incentives to education. Education is great, a task for the government to shoulder alone. It is why incentives exist to encourage the community, business, and individuals to support schools. Donations given to schools are tax-free, provided they are used for education. For instance, if a company donates 100 laptops to a high school, the company benefits from tax exemption, while students gain access to technology that can transform their learning. This is a perfect example of how government policy motivates private generosity. Section 45, Declaration of Policy. These states provide incentives that encourage community participation in education. Section 46, Relating to school property. school property used for education is given tax benefits with proceeds supporting private education funds. Section 37, relating to gifts or donation to school. Gifts or donation to school are tax exempt if used for classroom, labs, or libraries. Section 40, relating to earning from established scholarship funds. Earning from scholarship funds are also tax exempt if used to support students. Section 49, School Dispersal Program. School selling property under the dispersal program may exempt from the tax revenues reinvested in education. Section 50, Conversion to Educational Foundation. School may also convert into non-profit educational foundation. Assistance to students. Finally, we come to the heart of the matter. Assistance to students. All the funds, incentives, and policies ultimately lead to one goal, ensuring that learners have the opportunity to study regardless of their financial status. The government provides scholarship, grants aid, student loans, and free tuition in state colleges and universities. And importantly, special funds are set aside from students from marginalized or indigenous communities. These measures ensure that those who are academically capable but financially disadvantaged still have a chance at education. Section 51, Government Assistance to Students. The government provides scholarships, grants loans, and tuition subsidies to students in need. Section 53, Grant of scholarship pursuant to existing laws. Schools are encouraged to grant scholarship based on existing laws. Section 53, Assistance from the private sector. The private sector is also encouraged to support students, especially in science and technology. The Ministry of Education, Culture, and Sports. As we continue our discussion on education, let us now focus on the heart of our educational system, the Ministry of Education, Culture, and Sports, or MIC. While we have already seen how schools are funded and how students receive assistance, we must also ask who ensures that the system is properly managed, regulated, and guided. This is where the ministry comes in. Section 54, Declaration of Funds. The constitutes entrusted administration of the educational system to the Ministry of Education, Culture, and Sport. This means that the ministry has the power and the responsibility to oversee how schools function, how programs are implemented, and how institutions are regulated. Section 50. Organization. The ministry is headed by the Ministry of Education, Culture, and Sports, supported by one or more deputy ministers. Its leadership structures ensures that the ministry can handle the wide range of responsibilities from curriculum development, teachers training, school regulation, to cultural and sports programs. In summary, our educational system is strengthened through shared efforts, government, funding, private schools initiatives, incentives to education, direct assistance to students, and the leadership of the ministry. Together, this ensures that every Filipino learner has access to quality education that supports both personal growth and national development.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lloyd, for that insightful CV. Thank you so much for that one. And as we all know, that as an aspiring actor like him, it is indeed just like actors playing many roles on stage. But as learners and future educators, our greatest role is to be nation builders. Education in our spirit, and the nation is our audience. Now let me ask you a question, Miss Loverly. Okay, so based on the discussion of Mr. Lloyd, what have you learned?
We have learned about the sports and the national word of education.
Alright, so thank you so much for that. Now let's give Mr. Lloyd another round of applause. So since we're running out of time, so let's move to the last speaker. And finally, our sixth speaker, she is a proud graduate of Buanoy National High School under Humanities and Social Sciences, now pursuing Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in English, here at Cebu Normal University, Balamban Campus. She also serves as the Information and Creative Affairs Officer of the Education Council. Let's welcome Ms. Zara B. Indino. Let's give her a resounding applause.
Thank you, sir, for guidance. Good morning, respected educators and dear students. It is both an honor and a privilege to speak before you today as we examine a crucial piece of legislation that continues to shape Philippine education, the Education Act of 1982, particularly Section 56 to 73. These provisions may appear procedural or administrative at first glance, but they are, in fact, the pillars that support how our education system is governed, developed, and held accountable. As we go through this discussion, I invite you to reflect on how these policies continue to affect classrooms, institutions, and communities even today. Let us begin on our continue Mr. Ercilio's discussion with Section 56, which marks a significant restructuring of the educational governance framework. These provisions abolished the National Board of Education and transferred its operations, personnel, records, and equipment to the Office of the Minister of Education, Culture, and Sports. Moving on, Section 57 clearly outlines the Ministry's wide-ranging powers and responsibilities. These included formulating national education objectives, adopting long-term plans, developing and implementing programs in both education and culture, and supervising the entire school system. The Ministry is also tasked with working in coordination with other agencies, especially those involved with the development of national cultural communities and recommending education-related legislation. In Section 56, accountability is emphasized through the requirement that the Minister submit an annual report to the Batasang Pambansa. This report must contain comprehensive data on how national education plans are being implemented, as well as updates on students, enrollment, the condition of school facilities, the supply of teaching personnel, and the impact of education in various regions. Turning to higher education, Section 59 declares a national policy to make the college university education more equitable, efficient, and high in quality. It calls for the development of middle and crucial role in ensuring that colleges and universities, both public and private, align with the nation's development goals. For instance, if the country faces a shortage of IT professionals, the board may recommend curriculum improvements and scholarship programs targeting in these needs. The next part of the law, Section 62 to 66. Section 62 describes the Bureau of Elementary Education, which focuses on curriculum development, instructional material design, teacher training, and improvement of physical instructors. Similarly, Section 63 tasks the Bureau of Secondary Education with enhancing the quality of education at the high school level. This includes not only curriculum and teacher development, but also physical plant improvements, essential in accommodating the rising number of secondary level enrollees. Section 64 introduced the Bureau of Technical and Vocational Education, which is charged with development post-secondary non-degree programs that address real-world labor demands. Meanwhile, Section 65 covers the Bureaus of Education and Higher Education, whose role includes developing and evaluating university programs, compiling and providing policy support. It's a technical arm that ensures the Philippine higher education institutions remain competitive and accountable. Then Section 66 outlines the Bureau of Continuing Education, which leads the non-formal education sector. Its mission is to provide learning opportunities for adults, dropouts, or citizens who cannot access the formal school system. Programs like the Alternative Learning System, or ALS, which offers mobile technology and livelihood skills, embody the principles laid out in these provisions. Next, Section 67. Empower regional offices to customize and implement the National Education Plan at the local level. Each regional office can adjust national policies to suit local traditions and needs, ensuring that education remains relevant and culturally sensitive. Next, the Section 68. Section 68 established penal sanctions for those who violate education regulations, particularly Section 28 of the same code. These violations may include unauthorized operations of deceptive advertising. Offenders may be fined between 2,000 pesos and 10,000 pesos and imprisoned up to 2 years or both. If the offender is of school corporation, its head, and responsible personnel will also be held liable. Section 69, which empowers the minister to impose administrative sanctions. This may be applied in cases of school mismanagement, inefficiency of personnel, fraud in applying for permits, or failure to meet legal obligations. Sanctions may include suspensions of permit, fines, and closure for programs. However, the law explicitly states that sanction must not compromise the rights of students, teachers, and employees. Now, finally, to include the essential provision that supports implementation, Section 70 gives the Ministry authority to issue implementing rules and regulations. Section 71 contains a separability clause. If one part of the law is declared invalid, the rest remains ineffective. Section 72 refutes any consecutive laws to avoid legal confusions, while Section 73 states that Act took effect upon its arrival on September 11, 1980. In conclusion, Section 56 to 73 of Education Act of 1982 present a comprehensive framework for managing, improving, and relating
today's symposium reminded us of one truth, that education is the soul of society as it passes from one generation to the next. Baana sila ng edukasyon, ang imong kaalam o ang imong kahibalo, dili makawat sa bisan kinsa. So before we officially close the symposium, let us seal our learning with a promise. At this juncture, I encourage everyone to please stand and repeat after me. State your name. Pledge to value education as a gift and a responsibility. I will seek knowledge with honesty and perseverance. I will use my learning to serve others and uplift my community. I will strive to be a responsible student. And a dedicated nation builder. You now take your seats. I would like you to know that we have prepared a simple activity which is to be posted in the group chat, and I encourage everyone to answer it sincerely, following the rubrics provided. So on behalf of our group, thank you so much everyone for your time and energy. May we carry this lesson forward, not just as students, but as a future educator. This is Giovannis Capailes, your host in today's symposium. Thank you so much, and may God bless us all.